Lately, I've been talking about how to revise your novel. Normally, at this point in my video series, I would review a book in depth that covered some of the traits of good revision. But I don't know other authors' revision process as well as my own. So today I want to share how I revised my first novel. I'm going to cover why I made the decisions I made, as well as everything from organization to rewrites to finding the true beginning. This is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping writers like you transform your writing so it lingers with readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and writer. I'm going to start with failure and breaks. I completed the last 60,000 words of my first novel during NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. And immediately after, I tried to dive into revision. I thought I would spend the month of December revising that novel. This did not work out so well. I kept getting caught in the weeds and fixing sentence level issues when I should have been focusing on the big picture. I was still too close to my story to see what was there, not what needed to be there. So my first attempt at revision failed. What I needed was to take a break. I set that novel aside and I didn't come back to it for 3 months. Mind you, I was still writing during that time. I was just working with other stories and characters. When I first set my novel aside, I didn't know what I was waiting for. All I knew was I needed a break. And after those 3 months passed, I realized I was waiting for the excitement and magic of having completed this book to wear off enough that I could see what was on the page, not what I wanted to be on the page. I needed to take off my rose-colored glasses. This is something you might need to do as well. So pay attention to yourself and how you're feeling. If you're too excited at just having finished your book, you're probably not ready to revise it yet. Once you gain some perspective, you're ready to dive into those revisions. When I started my revisions, I began with rearranging, cutting, and expanding. I had a lot of work to do when it came to revising my book. Part of this is because I don't write in order. Every author has some moment or idea that they see first when it comes to their piece. For me, the first idea or the first scene that I see is the climax. What that means is I always know where I'm going. I always know what I want that big, impactful final moment to be, because that's what I see first. That gives me some leeway when it comes to writing. I can start by writing chapter 1, or I can start by writing chapter 10, because I know what that ending is going to be. So I'll hop around. If I'm feeling the beginning, I'll write the beginning. And if I'm excited about this other part, I'm not going to wait to get there. I'm going to write it when I'm excited about it. That means that I then have to go back and put my manuscript in order. Sometimes I don't know what that perfect order is. So when I write my scenes and chapters, I give them a title. That title does not appear in the finished story, but it's letting me know what the key moments of that scene or chapter are. Because the way I start organizing my books is by writing those scene titles on note cards and physically moving them around on the table. This allows me to see how each character is arcing, how the story is unfolding, how the plot is happening. At the same time, I'm cutting whole scenes. If I can't find a place for a scene, it goes in my cut pile. Or if a scene just feels dead to me and it doesn't connect to anything else, I toss that. I keep my pile of those scenes and I don't delete them completely from my computer. So then when I go back and I put my story in order, I'll pull the important lines or points from those scenes and find ways to incorporate them into other places. Also, while I'm arranging my note cards, I might stick a note card in there saying, write this scene, and I'll describe a scene that I need but haven't written yet. For example, I tend to write multiple point of view stories. Because of this, I will color code my note cards and I'll give each point of view character their own color. When I arrange my story, I can see where I have too much antagonist and not enough protagonist perspective, or something along those lines. So I'll write a note card saying, put a scene with Brooke here, or put a scene with Lady Owendela here. In an earlier video, I mentioned that there are 3 things you should look for the first time you're reading your book. One is where you're boring or dragging. Another is where you're too vague and you need to flesh things out. And the third is what the heck. When I'm doing this note card revision, I'm covering those first two things. Anything that's boring, I cut out. I just take that scene out completely. And anything that needs fleshing out, I add a note card to remind myself to do that. Even if you write in order, I highly recommend trying this note card method of organization because it allows you to visually see what's happening in your timeline and physically move things around. Once I put my scenes in order, I read the whole book. I don't edit as I go. I read the whole thing all the way through, and I note where things have changed and where I need to start those revisions. So if I have characters talking about an event, but I moved that event to later, I make a note reminding myself to go back and have them talk about something else there because that event hasn't happened yet. For example, at one point, one of my characters gets a lock on her bedroom door, and this is a big deal in my world and for her current station. When I rearranged my book, that scene happened later. So when she locks her door, I had to mark all of those places where she didn't have that door lock yet. Also, all writers come up with new ideas, twists, and red herrings as they're writing. So you're going to have to go back and seed those in earlier. Don't be afraid to do this, and don't be afraid to play with the order of your story. Next is finding the beginning and ending. You will have to rewrite your beginning multiple times. You might just have to rewrite a sentence or a paragraph or the whole chapter. By the time you've written a book, you are a much better writer because you've had a lot more practice. Like many writers, my original chapter 1 is now my chapter 2. I had started with my secondary protagonist, not the true main character, and this was confusing to readers. So I had to find a way to start with my main character. I tried pulling a chapter from later, and that didn't work because my book is in chronological order other than that first chapter, which bugged me. So I had to come up with a whole new chapter 1, and my book is better for it. The other thing I had to rewrite multiple times was my ending. Now I've mentioned that I see the climax first. What I didn't know was how I was going to resolve my antagonist. She has a little bit of an arc, and she really needed to get a comeuppance, but I didn't know what that was going to be. So I wrote what happened to my antagonist 8 different times. That 8th time, I was so excited because I had finally found what I wanted to happen in that story. If you're stuck on a scene or a moment or a chapter, don't be afraid to completely rewrite it from scratch. Sometimes just moving bits around is not good enough. Sometimes you need to rethink it entirely. And again, your book will be better for this. Your ending or that scene will be more impactful because of that extra effort. Ask yourself, what if this happened instead? How would this change my story? I'd like to leave you with why a professional editor shares her revising process. An author's first draft is not their published draft. So it's not fair for you to compare your first draft to your favorite author's published book. They didn't come out with that amazing book in the first try. So be aware that you're going to have to revise too, and that's okay. These revisions I've shared from my novel were just the beginning. I still had to go back and basically do these same things at the scene level, and then do copy edits and make sure my lines were easy to understand. Once I got my story to a place I was happy with, I took it to critique groups and incorporated their feedback. I did what I could to make it the best story it could be. Revision is where your story is transformed from an idea on paper to a book that will linger with your readers. How did you revise your first novel or story? Share your process in the comments below. And for more videos on revising and other aspects of writing, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with readers. Because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and writer. To find out more about me, go to www.ignitedinkwriting.com. There you will also find a revision checklist, which will walk you through when you should do overall story revisions, individual scene revisions, and line edits. And now it's your turn to use revision and feedback from others to ignite your ink.